Hello, everyone. This is Jackie of Jackie Brown Books, and I'm pleased to be here with the lovely Alice Chow.
Hello.
Welcome. So Alice, as you were just saying, it's been quite a journey to create this book, and I've been so lucky to have a diversity of stories in it. Like, for example, your story about one of the most famous incidents in the beginning of this of the pandemic. My goodness, it's a history making. It's history making. What happened to you on the Princess Diamond? Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, sounds good. So on the Diamond Princess, it was quite an adventure, and at the same time, there were definitely several other cruises that had similar situations where they had COVID, but they weren't quarantined like we were, and unable to dock in Tokyo unless we were all quarantined, and the Japanese government was very, very involved. So that was extremely unique in the sense that definitely the rest of the world still wasn't sure whether there would be a pandemic.
Exactly, because it was before it was officially called a pandemic. And until that time, it just seemed to be this odd thing happening in Wuhan, China. And you just think, and like it was, and all these like odd events that we never thought were going to go further than that. So first of all, I've never been on a cruise. What's it like? Like, I can't even imagine how big these boats are.
Like, they are definitely very big. This one that I was on they call it 17 decks, but it's not, it's 14 full decks, and then a few of them are just half decks at the top. And I don't know how many cabins there were, but definitely over 2,000 passengers and 1,000 crew.
Wow. So on a cruise, you can, you can obviously enjoy a lot of long walks, I guess.
Yeah.
And is it sounds like, is it considered a luxury one, the one you went on?
That's what they call it. Although that's the only, the Princess cruises are the only ones that I've ever been on. So I don't have a comparison of what the other ones are like.
And this was not your first cruise?
No, I've only been on a few, but this is not my first one.
Will you go on another one?
Yes, I will. And it's quite funny because recently, so I was on the cruise with my mom, and recently when my mom started looking at different cruises again, some of them were actually sold out. And I think one of the reasons are because at least for our cruise, they gave us some benefits in coming back, and we have to use them before a certain time, or at least book it before a certain time. So people are definitely already looking at booking a cruise at this point.
Because the chances of another pandemic, when this is over, it's not likely you're going to be stuck somewhere. But I know that just the idea of being stuck in a tiny cabin, like you describe in your story, is with no windows.
Precisely. And I think that definitely changed our mindset in whether we will consider another interior cabin for our next cruise, even though, as you mentioned, it likely won't re-happen this event. But it's something that we never thought would be a concern.
No. And so you were with your mom the whole time. Yeah. And so you describe in your story that you usually get along, thank goodness, but in such close quarters, it must drive you nuts. Both. I mean, what do you think would be worse, being on your own or being with somebody in that situation?
I think that being with a person that you can't tolerate 24/7 is as bad as if you were alone.
Hmm.
Although definitely some people were on the cruise on their own and they had the room to themselves.
Uh-huh.
Or on the other side where as soon as someone was contracted COVID, then you're alone in your room because they got escorted. And those people also stayed in their room on their own. So I
Uh,
think a lot of people experienced the feeling of being very, very alone.
oh man, and because you had no idea how long it would last either, did you? Like,
Yeah, um, because it changed a little bit in terms of the policies of what would happen. And at the worst point, they even mentioned that if you had a roommate that contracted it and you were in the room, your days would restart at zero based on when they left the room.
oh my goodness.
So I it did happen, but only for Japanese citizens because
Hmm.
they were just going straight home. So, but
Yes.
everyone else, yeah, that didn't apply to. Even though at first they wanted to apply to everyone.
Oh my goodness. And so how long were you in that room on the cruise before you got to come back to Canada?
It was 16 days, and most difficult part wasn't even at the beginning. It was towards the end because when you're counting down and there's that uncertainty of when you would be going home, that's an even worse feeling.
Yes, because in your story you mentioned that other countries took their nationals, their people out before Canada did. And so,
Yes,
oh, you describe it so well that people can feel that feeling of, or when I can feel that. And I love how you describe the friendships that your mother developed, which kind of kept her out of your hair for a bit while you were doing different things. And yeah, so it's a really well, you really described that experience well. And then when you came back to Canada, what happened then? Were you had to quarantine again?
yes. What's really interesting, so I was quarantined in Cornwall at the NAV Center,
Hmm.
flown back on the chartered flight. It was a So the Americans had a military charter flight, which was a much worse experience because it's very cold and like everything is very cargo like. But we had a regular commercial flight flown from Portugal, and but it went to our Trenton military base in Ontario, and then we had a bus that went to Cornwall.
Wow. It almost feels like when you like just even like thinking of it now, speaking to you as well as through the story, like you're treated like some diseased.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's like it is so much like something out of a science fiction novel. Just the
For sure.
oh
And
wow.
what's even more interesting is I could see how the Canadian government tried very hard in containing the virus and thinking that if we weren't the ones who were going to spread it, then it would be okay.
Hmm.
In the sense that when they notified us that we were going to be picked up, they had a lot of warnings about if you leave the ship without going on the charter, which was a possibility, then maybe we weren't able to board commercial flights. Like they had so many caveats and a lot of uncertainties for us to feel like we really should be staying on the ship and wait for that charter.
Oh,
Although not everyone came home on that charter. But yeah, they had a lot of warnings.
you must have felt like all your rights were gone at some point too. That
Yes,
all your
so
rights
many.
and freedoms.
Absolutely. And very out of control, especially because we weren't on any actual territory. We were still at sea when we were on that ships, and the Japanese authority could have definitely not allowed us to disembark if they wanted
Oh
to.
my God. Like as Canadians, we never expect that anything could happen where someone could imprison us
Yes.
without having committed a crime. Except,
Absolutely.
oh my gosh. Like,
And as you mentioned, as a Canadian, but when you're on that ship, even the Princess Cruises had no rights. They were really listening to what the Japanese authorities were directing them to do in order to ensure that we will eventually be able to get off that ship.
so many weird things have happened in this last year, from the
Absolutely.
things we see happening in the States, that just make you think about um, rights and leaders and what to do, like how an individual. It's mind-boggling, all the kind of themes that come up with both, especially the thing you lived through, but also just the things that we've experienced through 2020. Who could ever imagine that our country could survive everyone having to stay separate, and that
Yeah.
it's this tiny invisible virus that's ruling us rather than the queen or like or all these people that we think are the ones that are in power. Nope, it is a virus. That
Absolutely.
is, and it's still doing things like mutating, so we don't even know
I know,
what
I know.
this.
When we say it out and when we express it and say it out loud, it's even more strange, right?
Yes,
That's how
yes.
I feel every time. It's like digesting way more than it's very, yeah. I don't know how to even express it when we say it out and out loud.
Yeah. So was this your first time writing, or do you write other things? What inspired
It
you to get involved with this?
it is definitely my first time writing. I really enjoyed the experience and the process, and I have a newfound appreciation of how challenging it is to write, where the the flow and the thought is very difficult. And I have never felt like I was a natural writer. And also, I work in the science field, so technical reports is what I normally do. So the creative side, especially in writing, is definitely something that I now have a even greater newfound appreciation.
Oh well, your story is such an important part of this compilation, because 19 Tales of COVID-19. There's 19 authors presenting different perspectives. So we have yours of being quarantined. We do have someone who had coronavirus. Her story's in it. It's actually part of another story. We have I just interviewed one of the authors. Her story is about the change in working from home and some of the crazy things that happen from changing the whole way we work, and romance stories, unromanced stories. People prevented from flying. All kinds of stories are in this, and so I am so pleased. I'm so blessed that to have your story in this compilation, and that you're such an active marketer as well, because we're using all our connections to make sure that this book does really well, and that's fun too, to learn
Yeah.
all about the process of marketing a book, so that because many of the people who are in the book are writing other things, and so they'll be able to see how to apply all the marketing techniques when they publish their own stories. So thank you, Alice. We continue working together to get this story well known. And wow, what a powerful experience you describe in the book. And thank you for meeting with me now. And hey, go team 19 Tales.
Thank you.
Thank you.